Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button below. Super excited for today's episode and today's guest joining me. You can find him on Twitter at About That Wallet. Anthony, go ahead and give yourself an introduction.
Hey everybody, my name is Anthony Weaver. I'm the host of the About That Water podcast, where we help you build strong financial habits so you can live the life that you deserve. And ultimately, about a little bit about myself. Let's say I really started the show and basically because of just having an idea of so much education and information that was left out, either
Right.
from the parents or the people that we meet. And it wasn't until I just started changing my circles and started having money conversations as I was getting closer to graduate college. Not you would think it'll happen before high school, but no, it was college when it kind of hit
Right.
me, and that's kind of where I started. Growing up in Baltimore and just learning, there's so much more to life than what was around the block. So that's kind of where we kind of got my start, and ultimately just kept learning, and then started sharing information. It's too much information out here. It's too much money, and I really think that that is the way that we should approach our lives. To just kind of increase the knowledge of everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very similar to how I started the Passive Income Podcast as well. Is like I just wanted to have conversations with people and hear about their different journeys and paths and successes and failures. We learn from each other's mistakes as well. So it- I'm sure you've probably had a wild ride as well on your channel. I know I definitely have. This is actually episode 77. We're you're the 77th individual guest since I started this just last October. So
Okay.
it's
Wow,
been a
congrats.
wild roller coaster ride. And again, welcome to today's episode, and thank you so much for your time and for being here with us today.
Awesome,
Uh, with
awesome.
that said, let's hop into it. We were actually going to record yesterday, but you had a couple meetings because you have recently purchased a rental property. So is that your first one, or I guess let's just talk about your um, physical real estate and investing journey.
Yeah, it was this is my first rental property. And also investment property. So it's a duplex. So under FHA rules, I do have to live in one of the properties. And then the other one I'll rent out. So the cool thing I like about this is that I don't have to pay the mortgage by myself. It's
Right,
actually split. And that's been really a gym in its own. But the other thing is that I don't have any tenants in there right now. So I'm trying to get it tenant ready, but I have standards, like, a little high class on the standards, um, but with a low class budget. So
yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you.
yeah. Uh, and the reason why we didn't record yesterday was because I was having doing a second bid on windows. Because the windows there, the person that previously had it had shoddy work. It's almost like they installed it themselves, and it's like, just spend the extra money, do it right the first time so you don't have to worry about it again. Windows is very important. It's almost like a security risk as well as an energy savings thing. So that's one of the things I'm trying to tackle first. And that's why we couldn't record yesterday.
Right, and you're still in the Maryland or DC area, so I'm guessing, yeah, winters. I know you're quite a bit further south than I am, but you still get some pretty harsh weather through the winter. So energy savings through those windows. Yeah, heat loss in poor windows, man. You're just literally throwing money out the window, like it's literally going out the window, right?
Yeah, because they have all this new technology that, when you're not up to date, because you're like, hey, well, I can see out my window. It's a window. And then you think about it, well, people back in the 1920s, they had windows, like they were fine. But now it's like all this extra technology. They filled in with gas in between the windows now and trying to keep the heat outside and the cool inside. It's actually pretty cool, the
Right.
technology that came through. Yeah.
Right, yeah, so vice versa in the summer, you wanna keep it cool inside and keep the heat out, so yeah, because 'cause I'm sure, yeah, you get quite warm weather through the summer as well. So it's yeah, energy savings, basically year round.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm trying to save money, in the long run because with the AC units, I don't want them to work too hard. For
Right,
one, and two, even though I do have like a home warranty, they can be replaced, but I just don't want to replace them early, like myself. And that's one of the cool thing I love about insurance is that if for any reason, even though these things are old, they already documented that they're old, so that when they go up, I don't have to come out of pocket of it. That's what insurance is for.
right.
Let them replace it. So
Interesting, interesting. So, uh, you mentioned that you sort of started learning and putting yourself in circles uh, around the end of college. And how far removed from college are you now? Like, you look like you're still quite young. You are still quite young.
thank you. I'm only 10 years younger than you are. But
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
Um, so let's see. I finished college in 2013 with my master's degree. Yeah.
Nice.
So it's about like, yeah, 10 years. 10 years now. Actually, yeah, 10 it'll be 10 years May. It's
Yeah.
great.
Well, this is May, so exactly 10
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah.
Interesting. And then, so let's talk about sort of these last 10 years. What has your path looked like uh, since then?
Ooh, oh man. Well, let's just keep it on a financial journey. I'll keep
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
um, on a financial journey, because I was just getting my master's degree and I only knew about the technical side of things. So I was just working at a help desk and I think I was making about 65 at that time frame because I just got my master's and I got like two certifications around that time frame, two technical certs. And then once I left that particular job, I was able to increase my income by a third by going to the government, surprisingly, from a contractor.
Yeah,
Um, and then because of that, then I've been climbing the salmon ladder, as some say.
yeah,
And in that time frame, so I'll say within a 10-year span, I've pretty much doubled my income in 10 years.
yeah.
So
That's awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. And then, so with that added income, what was, if you've just more recently got into the physical real estate as a, investment vehicle, what were your first investments?
My first investments actually was myself, um, in purchasing books and getting around different people. So my that was my first investment, was to first understand what am I doing with my money, where is it going, and so what I did was actually start writing everything down on a sheet of paper, and then once I started investing in myself, then I was like, okay, how far can I take myself with the knowledge that I have? And then go from there. And then I started doing stocks, individual stocks.
Right.
And at this time, I never thought about a 401k or a retirement account because I always hear about it. It was taboo to me. And to be honest, I actually just started investing 5 years ago into my retirement account. So as you know, as we get older, it's like, oh man, I feel so late. I wish I had done it sooner.
Yeah, yeah.
But, it is what it is, and now I'm in the six figures just from maxing out, the 401k, learning about it, and didn't realize that it was actually a tax savings. So, I was like, "Why wasn't I doing this before?" So,
Right. Wow. Interesting. So you mentioned that stocks were your. Do you remember the very first stock you bought?
yes, it was, Capital One because I had a Capital One credit card.
Oh, makes sense to me.
Right. So I was like, I'm using it. The company is around. Um, and I wound up not keeping it because I was in a relationship that she wasn't great with her finances. And so it got to the point where it started leaching into my finances. And I actually had to sell all of my stocks that I had. So I had Capital One, Sprint, and it was another company. And back then, Sprint was great, because of the Sprint Spectrum. But then when they started talking about merging and everything like that, that's when the stocks went down, and I was like, "Yeah, I got to get out." So
Right. Yeah, that's a great point too. Finding a partner that is on the same wavelength as you. Obviously, mentally, physically, but financially as well, right? Like you have to be on the same page. And it sounds like you guys weren't even reading the same book.
Not at all. She was a heavy gambler. I learned how to gamble from her. Learned where all the casinos were. I had no clue where they were, but learned a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, and that's another one, like, gambling can be fun, but you can also lose a lot of money real fast.
Mhm.
So, um,
But I
it
do
sounds go ahead.
but I do have to say that for anybody that's out there that's looking into getting into a relationship, that is your biggest investment that you could ever have. Um, learn about it. It's a business transaction, no matter what anybody else tell you.
Right.
Your feelings might be there. You know, keep your pants on if you're not sure. Okay, make sure your pullout game is great. But if not, you got 18 years, if not more, to deal with it, with your choices. And then, yeah, it's let's just say that. Yeah, I'll sleep
Yeah.
tight.
No, that's actually, I don't know if you saw just a couple days ago, I put out a tweet asking, should you discuss finances on a first date? And the reactions were pretty much 50-50 mixed. Like 50% of people saying not if you don't want a second date, like don't discuss it if you want a second date. And so
Interesting.
many others saying, yeah, it's pretty important. So you probably should set that, baseline right away, right off the hop. Just see where you both stand. But it was an interesting interaction with all the comments and responses to that tweet. Just like I said, because it was split 50-50. So many people thought, that's not great first date idea, but maybe by second, third, fourth date you need to bring it up, but definitely not on the first date. And then so many others were like, "Yep, get it going right away, start talking." So I mean,
I
I
would just
there,
say that, me personally, what I did was actually bring up my finances on the first date, like the first face to face date with my current wife. And I was like, "Hey, look, I'm broke." Because I took her to a park. Like, well, we agreed to meet at a park,
yeah,
and which is free. And
yeah,
plus, we didn't bring food, so it was like strictly enough to like maybe like a half hour, just kind of talking, went around the park. But I brought up my finances immediately to say, like, hey, we can do more things like this. I don't have money to take you out to places. Um, and I'm working my way out of my debt. That's all I can do. You know, if you can't take me at my worst, then you will never take me at my best. So
yeah. So great first date idea right there. A park, it's free. I love it.
yeah.
I have similar, like, my ex-wife and I were not on the same page either, and that's probably a pretty big reason why we're divorced now. Similar to what you were saying about one of your exes that just was always, spending and not, thinking about the future. And like every time I had anything into any one of my like retirement savings plans, it was just like, she always wanted to buy something expensive, and I would always say I don't have it, and she's like, "Well, can't you take it out of your investments?" And I would be like, "No, no, no," and then I would finally cave, and you're not getting ahead when you keep um, you withdrawing from any of your investments, right? You really have to know that you're in this for the long term, whether your long term is 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, whatever time horizon you have set for yourself. So,
Yeah,
I
and one of the things that I had to sit down with myself, and this is part of growing up, is to taking ownership of what you allowed to happen in your life.
yeah,
Because it wasn't just a one-sided thing. Like you had to give into.
yeah,
And that right there, I had to sit with that for a long time. Um, and understanding that, and that's the only way we can grow, right? Like we have to actually understand what it is, take ownership of it, and let's go head on and deal with it. Put our feet on the ground, take one step at a time, and we'll get out of it.
yeah. And basically, again, going back to what I said earlier, learning from our mistakes, right? Like,
Mhm.
just keep learning. It's a lifelong learning process, and you're going to continue learning till the day you die, basically, right? So,
Definitely.
and you definitely learn a lot from the mistakes you make. You learn more from the mistakes than you do from anything else, in my opinion, for sure, right?
Yeah, the return on investment, or as you say here with the dividends, like, you dividend Dave. So you know that, whatever you put in, you'll get more of yeah, you'll gain more from your losses than you do your wins.
Uh, Not so much financially, but yeah, I see what you're saying. I definitely see
Yeah.
what you're saying. You're gonna gain more knowledge from your losses.
Mhm.
Um, you're gonna gain more, just cold hard cash from your from your gains for sure.
Yes.
So I guess let's just talk about sort of after those initial stocks that you had purchased, the Capital one and the Sprint and the other that you had to sell off, and then obviously at some point that relationship ended, and now you're pretty much back to square one by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So okay, so this is still somewhere in this last 10 years. So I guess let's give a time frame. This is now about 5 years ago, 2018-ish, 2017, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it was maybe about, 2016. Um,
2016.
2016, I got out of it, out of the relationship. So about 2018 is when I started investing. Yeah. So around that time, and I started investing again, but this time I just did it with the stock, with the index funds, because that's what the retirement. So 401ks, mostly index funds.
Right.
And then I started dabbling into individual stocks. But the main thing was that I started off with, for those of you who are starting off and not sure how to do your retirement, so your work or your employer more than likely will tell you what your percentage is. So either it might be like 5%, 12%, 10%. I've seen a range.
Yeah.
But for the government, they do about 5%. So when I first started off, I did 1% on my
So when you
paycheck.
say 1 in 5, are you talking like matching the
Yes,
employer or
the
the
employer
government
match.
matches your contribution?
Yes. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Yeah. So they'll match your contributions up to whatever they'll tell you. Just talk to the HR folks, but check with your HR representative. So what I did was, because I was new to this, so I started off with 1%. So I started off with percentages. I did 1%, see what my paycheck looked like. I was like, okay, I can live with this. Let me go up to now 3%. And I was like, huh, it's only a change of like $50 out of my actual paycheck, but I'm contributing almost like 100 something or $200. So I
Right.
was like, cool. Now let me bump this up to the match, which was 5%. And then I lived with that for a little bit. And I was like, you know what? I'm still having too much flex in my spending. Let me go ahead on and max out. What was the max? And I think at the time it was 678, around that time frame for your 401k. And once I started using, and that's when I switched from percentage to actual dollar amount. And then once I was doing a dollar amount, the government still only matched that 5%, but I was able to throw in the additional amount each
Right.
paycheck. And so so when came tax time, it was a lot easier to do my taxes. And I was like, cool. Now let me start changing around my W-4s and everything like that. So it evens out. So I now pay every year for taxes. So I can use
Which
money to invest. Yeah.
yeah, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because if you're paying more in taxes, that should mean you're making more money,
Yeah.
right? So,
When you're paying the taxes versus getting a refund at the end of the year. Because I don't want them to hold my money. I'd rather, use
yeah,
that money to invest and do whatever I need to now, and then just save some of it to get ready for the tax bill.
right. So you did also mention, that you started back in with index funds into your retirement account. We should also point out that these terms 401k and other terms that you used are very American U.S. terms, and
Yes.
other of my viewers in Canada and other countries around the world, I'm sure everybody knows their own countries' equivalents. Um, so after that, you mentioned some individual stocks that you started buying as well. So I'm just curious, what companies were those?
It was an oil company I started off with because at the time it was during the pandemic. So in 2020, that's when I started getting into investing. Um, I started off looking at like how Robinhood became all popular around that time frame. I think it was like 2019 or so. Um, yeah, early 2019. So I started off with the old company. I think it was like GPP. Because it was like Great Plains something something.
Mhm.
Um, but they were nice, and then I get like a little K form from that as well. And then yeah, I was just dabbling around in some other individuals. I can't remember because I was just buying and selling at that time. So
Right. So just kind of anytime there was a decent enough profit, you would just say, I'm gonna take the money and run, so to speak."
it sounds nice. No, most of the companies I was picking were losing money because
Oh, right.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I've been there too, right?
yeah,
I'm guessing these were kinda like, penny stocks and lower value stocks that, you probably weren't paying a dividend either, and you were just I don't wanna say blindly throwing money at it, but probably a little bit blindly throwing money at it because, like I said, I've been there too, where you think, "Oh, maybe this is gonna go from, an 85-cent stock up to a $2 stock, and I'll make some money," and then all of a sudden, "Oh, it's a 34-cent stock, and I've just lost money."
that's exactly it. One company I cannot recall, but I remember I was watching this thing heavy. I was one of those 80-cent stocks. So I put in for 80 cents. And I think I bought like 100 of them. It was like $8.
Yeah,
And then it drops down even further to like 20 something cents. And I was like, do I put any more in there? And then I was like, let me put in another $10. I was like, all right, cool. So now I got like another 200, 300 shares.
shares, yeah.
And then, the company just sat there for like, I don't know, like 5 months. And then the time I pulled it out, I believe I pulled it out on a Friday. By that next Friday, it shot up to like $2. I was like, really?
Yeah, but luckily, like you said, it was small dollar amounts, so you're
Mhm.
not, it's not gonna break the bank, but yeah, it's one of those ones like, "Oh, man, if I had just waited another week," and I've been there too, like, I've made all the mistakes there are to make, it seems, so
Well, I mean, that's ultimately why a lot of people like to listen to these things because they learn it from our mistakes and other people's mistakes. It's just that we're brave enough to talk about our mistakes publicly.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've shared a lot on a few different, when I've been guests on a few other podcasts, and I've shared, like, my entire story, and there's a lot of mistakes through my 50 years or 50 trips around the sun. There's been more than one mistake made financially.
True. So, like, what stocks do you like? I mean, I know we talking about stocks, but like, what dividend stocks are your favorite? Like your top three?
Yeah, so right now, everything I have is in the Canadian market, so the TSX, which
Oh,
is the Toronto Stock Exchange.
hmm.
But with that said, there's a lot of Canadian companies that also trade, in New York on the New York Stock Exchange. So right now, this year, I've been buying. I started a position late December, early January, so I've been dollar cost averaging into two big ones, which is Bell Canada. They're basically the biggest telecommunications company in Canada,
Okay.
and they pay a really nice monthly dividend. Actually, at the start of January, right after I started into them, they increased their dividend, so that was really nice. I'm like, oh, I'll take a dividend raise. And another one is Bank of Nova Scotia. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Canadian banks, but the Canadian banks are the big five, and then there's a sixth one called National. So really the big six, and they're just extremely strong. Um, we don't have the regional banks that you have in the U.S. So it's basically these six banks hold somewhat of a monopoly. Um, and yeah, so there's just not the pressure on the banking industry in Canada, and there's also always been more, kind of rules and regulations. Canada, the banking industry was not hit nearly as hard back in the 2008, '09, financial housing crisis.
Hmm.
So, yeah, Canadian banks are I can't really say enough good things about them. Actually, I just opened another position with Toronto Dominion. Toronto Dominion, you're probably more familiar with because that's TD, like TD Ameritrade, like, uh, Boston Gardens, TD Ameritrade Gardens. So, yeah, those those are just sort of the ones that come to mind, and all 3 of those, like I said, Bell, Bank of Nova Scotia, and TD all trade on in New York as well. So those are options for and I know there's, American investors that I see on Twitter that do buy, that do hold all 3 of those companies. And then I have, a variety of REITs as well and other, a couple ETFs and some different, like food and restaurant type stocks. So my portfolio is a little bit all over the place, but I'm okay with it.
I mean, that's really good. Especially you seem like you're keeping it open. So I was just curious,
Yeah,
because my favorite stocks, like I love this company called IRM, which is this Iron Mountain. Mostly
right.
because I see their trucks
Yeah.
going around, and I was like, "Oh, my money's at work." So,
Yeah, that's the document shredding company.
mhm.
Yeah, I see those here too. They're in Canada as well.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah,
Wow, cool.
there you go. Huh? Your money's at work in. I'm not sure if they're in any other countries other than Canada and the U.S., but yeah, they're definitely in Canada as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, because it's one of the few stocks that I have as a dividend. I need to check my portfolio right now, see what other ones that I have, 'cause I'm always been curious about the dividends, but also I'm like, always do the drip method.
Right.
So, which for those of you, I think it's what called dividend reinvestment
Plan.
plan. There we go.
Yeah.
Thanks. See, you're the man. Um, and I use the drip method mostly because I know I'm not pulling the money out anytime soon. So,
Yeah, the drip method is really convenient, automated. You just, almost set it and forget it. Every month, the company, or every quarter, your dividend just buys a few more shares or fractional shares or whatever the case may be. And so that every quarter you're just getting more more money in the dividend payment and then you're reinvesting more money to get more shares. So it's just like
that's what you
I've
do
made this comparison before. I'm like, it's the exact opposite of a vicious circle, right? It's like it's like the friendly circle.
because everybody getting paid and everybody's happy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I really think that a lot of companies bet on people doing that drip method, mostly because I think Warren Buffett said that he likes stock. He doesn't really care about dividend stocks because he's like, why should the company continue to pay, um, people who are investing when they could use the money to do what they need to do with the company?
Right.
So,
With that said, pretty well all of like his top 5 or 8 holdings are like huge dividend payers. So
so you say one thing, but it really means something else.
yeah.
Like,
I do get the argument though, like, okay, if the company isn't paying a dividend, but they're making a profit, that means they could be paying down debt. They could be reinvesting into infrastructure within the company. There's a lot of other things that they could be doing with that money that they are paying out in the dividend. But then the opposite side of that argument is, well, paying the dividend shows the shareholders that there's, strength in the company. And I mean, you can argue both sides of that all day long, every day. But and again, from our point of view as investors and shareholders, I just like to see that money show up into my account. Just show me the money, right? Just show
show
me
me,
the money.
show me the
Yeah,
money. Yeah, because I started getting into dividend stocks only because I started looking at, again, as my education piece is just learning about it. And one of the companies that I've been rooting for a long time was Ford, because I know Ford's been slacking a little bit, but they've been trying to get back uh, off the starting ground, and it's kind of a shame. Like you have companies like Tesla and other EV companies that are able to kind of shoot up in the 100 range, and you have Ford just laying around the $4 range for like the longest, and then comes right back down again.
yeah.
It's crazy. but the dividend's been pretty nice. It's at 4.96% right now, but I mean, it's what we can get. So
I did just see an article a few days ago about Ford and Tesla actually coming to an agreement where the Ford EVs are going to be able to use the Tesla supercharging stations.
that is going to be a game changer then.
Yeah. So, because all like every other, so it's kind of like sound you are old enough to remember like the Sony Beta versus VHS.
Yep, I remember that.
Right. So Tesla versus all the other EV charging stations is basically the same kind of thing. One works, and then all the others work on the other side. So Ford basically came out and said, "Listen, Tesla's got the better technology. The superchargers can charge an extra 300 or 400 kilometers in whatever it is, 20 minutes."
Mhm.
And so yeah, they really wanted to partner with them, and it sounds like from the article that I read, it sounds like it's going to happen if it hasn't already.
Yeah, I was looking at just pulled it up here on Fortune, and that is big news because now it's not exclusive. I wonder if it's almost like having an iPod and an Android where like, Apple does a really good store and then now the Android people can start using their store.
Yeah. That's another good comparison, right? Is, the Apple versus, or yeah, like whether you want to call it Apple, iOS, whatever, versus Android or Samsung or whatever.
Mhm.
And, but yeah, similar great comparison, it's kind of been Tesla versus the rest of the world.
Right.
And now, teaming up with Ford or partnering with Ford, but whatever the agreement's going to be, whatever it's going to look like, I think it's incredible for Ford, and I mean, I don't really know what Tesla gets out of the deal, but I'm sure they're gonna get something out of it as well, right?
Yeah. But then you get the other rivals, like the other car companies that are doing electric. What does it do for them? And do they have to continue to use these wonky adapters just to kind of to get power?
Right.
Um, will there ever be like a universal power plug? Like, again, from I think Apple just switched to using USB-C for their cell phones now. So I guess to the same comparison with the cell phone industry,
Yeah.
it's like for charging, why should I have to use a whole proprietary charger just to charge my phone?
Well, Apple had to switch to the USB-C because of a ruling by the European Union that they had to be all the same, and so once the EU made that ruling, Apple said, "Well, it just makes sense for us to switch the entire world, like, because why would we make 2 different chargers?" Which I think everybody's asked that all along anyways, "Why are you
Right.
making a different charger?"
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Just keep it all the same.
So, I guess what does your, kind of portfolio look like now? What do you think it's gonna look like in the future? Where do you see your real estate investing going in the next 10 years? You're just gonna kinda be happy with your duplex and ride it out, or do you hope to add properties to that or Airbnbs or something? Or
Um, Great question. Um, because it is my first one, I don't want it to be my last one. At least I want to do maybe three more just to kind of get my feet wet. And I think after the first one, I would. It's a lot of work, and for you guys out there that looking into getting a property or anything like that, I highly recommend. It will save you thousands of dollars and a headache. Go ahead on and bring it in, have it inspected before you even put down your earnest money.
yeah, for
I
sure.
highly recommend that. Um, because when you put down the earnest money, you just feel like you're locked in and it's just like a mess to get out of. So just keep that in mind. So far as my rental portfolio, ultimately in 10 years, I still want to own my own hotel. So I just want to
Oh, nice.
put a big W on there and saying call it the Weaver Hotel or something like that. I don't know yet, but it will have a W. Um, the other thing, far as my stock portfolio, um, right now I'll probably do more. Just keep it on the index fund side of the house. The
Yeah.
stocks, I'm not doing well in them. So to be honest, I'm learning puts and calls, so I am doing okay there to some degree, but it's mostly been up and downhill since the pandemic. So, well,
Right.
since the start of the pandemic, everything's been going downhill because everything was going great, I think, in 2021.
Yeah.
But then, it's just been a mess ever since. So it's been
Yeah.
kind of steady, I will say that. And yeah, so in the coming time frame, I'm just thinking of what else is left for me to invest in and like really hone my skills in. But I'm thinking I'm moving towards a more leave it, set it and forget it deal
Yeah.
and
And
just ride it out.
yeah, and that's exactly the ETFs are wonderful vehicles for that because, there are literally professional money managers handling those index funds or ETFs, and say they have 15 or 20 companies in that basket, and companies number 19 and 20 aren't performing, so they just remove them and add two more into the basket that are doing better, and you don't have to ever worry about really what they're doing. So I definitely get the argument for ETFs and index funds, just incredible vehicles.
Yeah. And for those of you who are brand new and this is like your first episode watching, make sure that you understand those expense ratios. Try to get them as low as possible, under 1%, under 0.06% if you can get it. Like you mentioned earlier, TD Ameritrade has, no, not TD Ameritrade, Fidelity has zero commissions, zero expense ratio. What do they call it? Index funds, so that you can actually get into, which is the total stock market ones out there. So,
Right.
highly recommend to take a look into that.
Yeah. Like I said, yeah, ETFs and index funds are great, but yet definitely know your expenses as well for sure. That's great. Now, hotel, that sounds awesome. I
Yeah.
like the W too, because like W, stands for win. I don't You're probably a sports fan.
Um, no, I don't watch sports,
Oh,
unfortunately.
no, just, I'm thinking W, like
Oh, a L, like somebody get an L or a W. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like the W, so it's like, winning basically. I where would you want, like, location, with real estate, they've always said location, 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 so where would you want to have a hotel?
Honestly, I would like to do like similar to like a resort. So it's like everything is inside that one unit. So
Yeah,
like if you needed to do your shopping, like how it would it if you ever been to Vegas, just like the hotel, you don't really have to leave the hotel for anything. And that's kind of how I want it. But also I wanted to have it more leisure set up.
right.
So you got the rooftop pool set up. You get to enjoy it out there. If you want to go out, have a full leisure park, you get some bike trails and all that fun stuff. I just want it to be more leisure.
Yeah, no, that sounds like an awesome dream and a goal to stride for. So I definitely wish you the best on accomplishing that goal.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I do have your YouTube channel right here as well, and
Hey.
let's just talk about that wallet. You can find them here on YouTube. If I can find the right tab here, I'm going to click over to it, and right here, I purposely waited to do this. You see this subscribe button over here, everybody? Just go there and just do this. All you gotta do is just see how easy that is.
Nice.
So, yeah, if you wanna go ahead and talk about your YouTube channel a little bit, feel free.
All right. So on my YouTube channel, here is where I just pretty much this was an ask from one of my listeners because at first I was so anti YouTube because I did not want to show my face on the screen because I didn't think I would be comfortable doing it. And yet since 2020, uh yeah, I think it's 2020 or 2021 when I created the page. This kind of goes through just all of my episodes since 2020. I didn't do any since 2021. I did not do any back episodes. So what you see is up to speed. If you can click on the playlist, I just want to highlight that right quick.
I just gotta get back to
Oh,
the okay, playlist right there.
yep. So in the playlist, I created different playlists for those of you who are just curious on different topics. So I have at least several episodes about real estate, women voices,
Yeah.
business how tos, and also just other episodes that I've been on. So more than likely, if Dave actually put this up on YouTube, I'll go ahead on and add this particular episode to shows that I've been on.
Oh, nice.
So you can see where I've been featured at and just kind of talk about different guests. And this has been one of the things I try to give people just the playlist and understand like, hey, no matter where you are, somebody's been there and they willing to help out. So this is pretty much my YouTube channel. I mean, I go live from time to time. So if you click on the live tab, you get to see some of the shows that I've been live on. And like, so I'm also like a almost like a co-host or a reoccurring host on another podcast.
Nice.
So, we able to stream it on mine as well at the same time. So we have lots of fun. We have drinks every half hour. So they go on to like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, but that's only because everything just started picking up and we just had great conversation. So
Yeah, lives are a lot of fun, especially when you get talking to a few people on a panel, plus the chat going on in the comments, and yeah, lives. I agree, lives are a lot of fun. Live streams.
yeah, it took me a while to get comfortable. So my first ones, trust me, they not the best, but I gotten better over time.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. I'm gonna also, if I can just do it quickly here, I think I can share this. I, that didn't work the way I was expecting it to.
Oh, for Twitter.
Yeah, did it come up?
Yeah, I see Twitter.
Oh, it did work the way I was.
Oh.
It's because it's the same logo up here about that wall, and I'm like, "Oh,
Oh.
that's the I thought it was still on the YouTube page." Sorry, that's my bad, my bad. Yeah, so basically, you can find Anthony here on Twitter at About That Wallet, and make sure to go over there and give him a follow.
Yeah, greatly appreciate it. And if there's anything you guys want me to talk about, please let me know. I'll definitely either work it into the program or I might already have did episodes on it and I can either shoot it your way or make a small snippet from other people that have put it together so I can actually make like smaller cuts if need be.
Cool, awesome. What else do you want to talk about? I'm just gonna open it up here, wide open.
Let's keep
Anything
going.
else you have?
Um, I have to say one of the questions that I ask all of my guests, which is what are the habits that could take you to that next level? And one of the things that, because I'm mostly focusing on habits, is to one, make sure that I'm listening to an audiobook every time I'm in the car, at least 10 to 20 minutes of it. Um, and then two is to increase my consistency. I'm trying to get very consistent, find something that I'm comfortable doing because having that rhythm does make life a lot easier when I plan everything. And then three is to hone in on my schedule, to continue to say no, to continue to say yes to the things that matter.
Time
And
management is important.
yes, yes. And continue to put my name out there and like being on shows like yours, Dave. It's been such an adventure. And ultimately, yeah, I think so. Yeah, continue to put myself out there, which includes talking on podcasts, talking in person, and ultimately just continue to give. That's that's ultimately what's going to take me to that next level. Is if I can hone in on all of those four things, I think it will get me to where I really want to be.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kinda give you an answer to that as well, even though you didn't really ask it as a question. I'm still gonna give you my 2 cents worth here, so
Okay, good.
and actually, I have one of the same words that you used. So, I call them more, character traits than habits, but I guess that's kind of interchangeable, and for me, first is, patience. the patience to know that you're in a long game. This isn't you're not gonna get rich overnight, investing, whether it's dividend investing or, growth strategy or, you know, whatever you're investing in or real estate even, you need the patience to know that you're in this for the long game, whether that's 15, 20, 25 years. You just need the patience. 2 is the consistency, like you mentioned. For me, it's the consistency of, that pay yourself first. Every 2 weeks when you get a paycheck from your active income from your job, you wanna make sure that you're buying passive income. Again, this is kinda going back to the dividend structure of, buying something that's going to pay you, right? So, patience, consistency, and then discipline. The discipline to have the patience and the consistency.
Yeah, I like it, yeah. Because it's, one of the things that, you would think that the stuff that we know now would seem so elementary, but it could be profound to somebody else.
Right.
Like, I recently did a post. I believe I put it on Instagram and then, not on Instagram. I did it on Twitter and then I kind of repurposed it, put on Instagram and Facebook, which was no matter what, take $1 and put it into your savings account. Just $1. Just start there. And when somebody else got to me, they told me because of that one post, I now have $150 in my account now that
Yeah.
they never had before. And so now they're on their journey to start looking at other areas where they can either make more money or save some money.
Right.
And those are the stories that I like to hear. Um, and this is the reason why I do what I do is to help change at least one person's life. And once I did that, I think I did my job. I can pass away tomorrow and be happy that I at least had that opportunity to make an impact to somebody's life.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way with, people listening, to this episode and so many of my past episodes and past guests. And, maybe they didn't learn a lick of wisdom from me, which is highly likely, but out of 77 people, I'm sure, somebody out there of the viewers and listeners have learned a lot. Actually, I know people have learned a lot from a lot of my different guests, and it's just incredible to hear that feedback, right? When they say, "Oh, so and so said something that I hadn't thought of before,"
Mhm.
and it's really made me think and think for myself and whether I, agree or disagree with them. But that's what we need to be doing, right? Is having these discussions so people can do that for themselves. Go out and research and it goes back to, it's so easy these days to research. Like it's Google, YouTube, and you can find all the information you need immediately. You do have to kind of sift through the disinformation, but you know,
Yeah.
you can do that. You should be a reasonable cognitive human being that can sift through that disinformation and make a decision for yourself based on what you feel is the best decision for you, right? So,
Yeah. And think about it, you don't have to do everything at once. Take your time. Like I
yeah,
just shared with you today, I didn't have to I started off with 1%. Even though my employer was doing 5%, I started off with 1% and then slowly worked my way up.
right.
Even though everybody else was like, why didn't you start at 5%? Because I still had bills to pay.
Yeah, and you wanted to see.
Right.
Yeah, and I get that too. Like, yeah, there's the other side of that is the bills keep coming in.
Hmm.
Like, another phone bill this month? I just paid a phone bill last month. Are you sure? They just keep coming every month.
Well, and I was thinking about this from the financial community because you're also in the financial community as well. I think sometimes we can't talk to everybody. Every all of our advice isn't for everybody, and each level has their own separate levels of understanding, and also what you can and can't do with your finances.
Right.
Like if we were having this discussion when I first started my investment into the stock market, I wouldn't tell you anything. I was like, "Hey, I just threw it in because I didn't know what was happening. I just threw it into my retirement account. I don't know where it's going now."
Yeah.
But now I could tell you exactly where it's going at, and the reason why I made the shift from where it was to where it is today is because of the education that I continued to educate myself on it. So I would say again, to listeners, is the best advice you could ever do is ask yourself why. Why are things the way they are right now? Why is your company is only investing into these particular stocks? If you're a teacher in the US, you have access to I think it's called the full 3B plan. Plus, you can invest into an actual 401k at the same time. And it's amazing. It's either 403B or 435. I got to kind of get it right. But either way, you can do, like, as a teacher, you can invest and max out both of them at the same time, even though your income isn't that great.
Right.
So it's like, we talk about investing, but do we talk enough about getting more money? And I think that's why I like your show, is because you talk about how to buy more money.
Right.
That's the only way you can think about it. Like,
Yeah.
you're buying more money as a dividend, and this is the greatest thing that ever could come up that I've ever thought of. So,
Yeah. It's incredible. I love it. It's like I have a lot of my the REITs primarily, and some of the food companies pay me a monthly dividend, and it's just, and I mean, I've said this a million times before. I get it. 5% is 5%, whether it's paid monthly or quarterly. But it's just something psychological to see that, whether it's like a $5 dividend or a $50 dividend, when it just hits that account every month, it's like psychologically feels great. It's like I get the warm and fuzzies every time I wake up in the morning and I see a notification on my phone that a dividend went into my account. I'm like, awesome! I just got paid to sleep. I just got paid. No, actually, I just got paid to wake up to read my phone. Like,
and again, so what Dave is talking about is depending on your financial situation. Because keep in mind, if you don't do the drip, you taking it out and it's considered as income. And you have to report it as income. So if you already maxed out, you're already paying money already on your taxes, it's okay to let it drip a little bit.
yeah, let it
In case
ride.
that- so
Yeah, I'm
and
definitely not the person to talk to about taxes. Obviously not in the US, but not in Canada either. And there are obviously investment vehicles to make sure you're in the right account,
Mhm.
so that you're limiting the amount of taxes that you pay on the dividend income. So yeah, definitely check with a tax professional out there to see where you want to be. I do know the TFSA in Canada, the tax-free savings account, is pretty much your best vehicle until you have it maxed out. That that's where you want um, the majority of your investments. Like I said, until it's maxed out. So,
Yeah.
and not financial advice. Check with a professional, but that one's a fairly easy one.
Yeah, it's super easy. And that's the thing. A lot of the stuff is easy. You just gotta read it. And most people don't. I would say you don't need to know everything, but know at least know your situation.
Right.
Know what's available to you, and then know what you currently have in purchasing in. One of the books that I highly recommend, I just started reading it on audiobook, I think last week. It's called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions by John C. Maxwell. Even though it's a leader book, but it's actually a personal book, so that you can start asking yourself the right questions and start asking yourself, why am I here today? Where do I want to take myself tomorrow? And am I doing the best that I can do? And
Yeah.
if you can answer those three as a yes, um, then hey, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, those are great questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want,
Cool.
yeah.
I I do feel like we could just keep talking for hours, but we probably should wrap this up, and we'll let you get on with the rest of your day. I do truly appreciate you coming on and being a guest here on the Passive Income Podcast. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Nice. And please, anytime you'd like me to come over at about that wallet, I'd be more than happy to join you as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely shoot you a link once we catch up offline.
Cool, cool. And if you're still watching 55 minutes later, please, please, please be sure to like and subscribe.